Chu, who represents San Gabriel Valley in Los Angeles County, and Wendy Carrillo, human rights journalist and congressional candidate in California. Thank you both for being here. Wendy, if it's a surge that has to do with, attempting to remove violent criminals from the streets of Los Angeles, that's one thing. But we just talked with the attorney and the husband of a mom whose only, criminal record involves working and using a social security number that wasn't real. So even if it's a surge, it seems to be sweeping up moms.
Yeah, absolutely. And children. And this isn't anything new. We've seen it in the previous administration, but now it's heightened. People are afraid, they're scared, they need to know their rights. And we need to also talk about the prison industrial complex and detention centers that have detained women and children and families for years now. And so we're seeing that more and more. And now that this mother is being removed from the country, where is she going? Does she have family? Will she be okay? Or is she just being taken to another country that she hasn't known since she was 14?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of human rights violations occurring.
Well, Wendy, it does seem that there's something sort of existential about the fact that you have, California that has very liberal immigration policies, that is a very sort of blue state in the biggest sense of the world, of the word, and has a very large non-white population, also has this incredibly vibrant economy. So immigration has not exactly hurt California.
No, it's quite the opposite. Immigration and immigrants are what make this country great and what makes the city and the state amazing. We are one of the most multicultural, multi-ethnic states in the entire union. You can go anywhere in the world. Here in Los Angeles, this is why the city is the first place. It is the resistance. It is the first movement against the Trump administration that cares very little about people of color, about immigrants, about LGBT folks, about trans women, about women's rights. And so now we are seeing a movement of people coming together that are unifying against, if you care about Muslims and refugees and have been protesting at the airports, then you should care about families that are being separated and are being detained in detention centers, and their civil rights and human rights are being incredibly abused and violated.
Yeah, and
so if immigration enforcement goes to your house, you don't need to open the door. You can stay silent. You have a right to an attorney. If they say that they have a warrant, to let them slide it underneath your door and make sure that it is signed by a judge and it has your name and your address, and that immigration forms I-200 and 205 are not warrants signed by a judge, and you do not need to open your door. So immigrants and people that are in mixed status families need to know their rights, and there are so many organizations that have all this documentation in various different language, like the ACLU being one of them, so that you have that information on your refrigerator, know your rights, talk to your neighbors, and ensure that you have a right to an attorney.
And Congressman, what is Congress going to do about these 750,000 odd dreamers who voluntarily gave their information up? Their contact information is in the hands of the federal government, now in the hands of the Trump administration. Is Congress going to do anything to protect them?
Well, I was encouraged because there was a bipartisan bicameral act that was just introduced. I'm part of it. I'm a co-sponsor of this, and it is an act to provide relief to the dreamers. I was encouraged at the press conference that we had because I heard Republicans actually speaking very strongly in behalf of the dreamers. So we just need for that word to spread amongst more of the Republicans that are in Congress.
Well, I mean, and Lupita, whose story we just told, was a dreamer. She came here when she was a child.
Yeah, the original
So you've already
dreamers.
had a dreamer deported, essentially.
Yes, it's the original dreamers, and that is the story of migration in this country. And that, because of U.S. foreign policy in other nations, we often see these countries struggle with jobs and the economy, and there's not a lot of opportunities. So people don't migrate because they want to. They do it because there are necessities, and you need that. That's one of the reasons that my family immigrated from El Salvador during a civil war, and we came to this country seeking opportunity in the American dream. So now, even years later, we're seeing the same cycle. It's like we're reliving the 80s. We're reliving the 60s when the U.S. had Operation Wetback. And so now it's clearly targeted. We're seeing it in communities across Los Angeles and across the country. This one was in Texas. And so people just need to know their rights and know that they don't need to open the door, and then they could remain silent, and that they have a right to an attorney.
Do you think that Democrats right now have been strong enough up to now in terms of standing up to the Trump administration? I think that there have been some Democrats that have been clearly fearless. There are some that have been very safe and not doing enough, and that is the status of the current Democratic Party. And so there are
people across the country that want to see the party be a lot more forceful and fearless and truly represent the voices of the people of this country. And the fact that we have to lobby so hard against voting for somebody like Jeff Sessions, and the Democrats need to be lobbied without knowing, like, you should know that you should not be voting yes on Jeff Sessions, but you need to be called 50,000 times in order for you to make that kind of vote, shows a complete disconnect between the Democratic Party and the people.